Would I be the asshole by not telling a guy I've been dating for a month that I'm having artificial insemination to be a single mother? Prior to lockdown, I decided to be a single mother by choice. The journey to accepting this has taken 2 years and included counseling and a very thorough plan to ensure I could do this alone. Right before I was due to have artificial insemination with the donor sperm, the pandemic hit and treatments were canceled. There was no timeline for when things may reopen. For a few days, I was devastated as I was so mentally prepared for this, and then I picked myself up and decided to park my plan. After all, I didn't have a choice. I downloaded a dating app out of curiosity and figured that I could still chat to guys and see what happened without having any expectation. I've been talking with this guy, let's call him G, and it's only been a month, so very early stage. However, we've met up twice and spoken many times on the phone. And I get a really good feeling from him. For the first time in years, quite frankly, I feel emotionally connected with the man and it feels completely natural and promising. During this time, my clinic called me to say they have an approval to open and do I wish to go ahead this month with my treatment. I want to be a mother more than ever, so I said yes, and now I'm on medication with my appointment set for next week. While there's no guarantee I'll get pregnant on the first go, I have a conflict in mind about informing G of my plan. On one hand, it's at such an early stage of our romance without yet being anything committed that I feel like I'm bringing something up prematurely. On the other hand, I wonder what may happen as time goes on. Am I just delaying the inevitable? Is it deceptive of me not to inform him of something so fundamental in my life? A friend told me that I'd sabotage a potential relationship with him by telling him of this plan right now, and that a man who is really into me will accept me even if I'm pregnant, and that more time is needed for him to really get to know me. But in my mind, I'm wondering if it will piss him off by suddenly saying, "Hey, I'm pregnant by the way." Spoken loosely about wanting kids in the future, so I know he'd like a family, but it was a brief passing comment. I'm also not willing to wait to get into a long-term relationship, and we are far too early into be thinking about a family together.
My boyfriend and I have been dating for over 3 years. His birthday was coming up and I wanted it to be special. I decided to pick out a day where I went to the mall and got things that I thought he'd like and put it all together as a big present. While I was there, I ran into a friend of his named Matt. I told Matt what I was planning, and since he was his close friend, I asked him if he'd be willing to help me pick out some things. Matt of course agreed, so we hit up some shops to find things that we both thought my boyfriend would really like. My boyfriend and I had recently moved in together and I knew that he was working, but his job's hours are always changing, so I didn't know when he'd get home. I didn't want him to catch me red-handed with all of the things before I hit them, so I asked him what he was doing and when he'd be home. That's when he told me that he was already off work and hanging out with Matt at the bars. This immediately stopped me in my tracks because there was no way he'd be hanging out with him since Matt was just a few feet away from me in the store. When I told Matt, he was confused too because he was never asked by my boyfriend to hang out at the bar. We have a very trusting relationship, so normally I'd believe him, but in this case I knew that it was a lie. I wasn't sure what to do because he's never lied to me before, or at least I've never caught him in a lie like this. That's when I decided to go home and wait for him. Part 2 of how my boyfriend lied to me about who he was with. When my boyfriend got home, he acted completely normal. I asked him how it was hanging out with Matt at the bar. He told me about his day and told me how him and Matt just grabbed a few drinks nonchalantly. This made me angry because I knew he was lying, but I wasn't sure how to bring up the truth. I also didn't know how to tell him that I was hanging out with Matt without bringing up that I was also shopping for his birthday present. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and let it be. However, when we were laying in bed later that night, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted him. I told him I ran into Matt at the mall when he texted me, so I know it wasn't Matt who he was hanging out with. He quickly got frazzled and I could tell he was trying not to tell me something. However, this only made me more curious. Finally, he told me to wait a minute and he left the room. When he came back, I sat up and he came to my side of the bed. He took out a box from behind his back and got on one knee. My eyes widened. He confessed that he was out ring shopping for me because he knew I was the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. We had a weekend getaway planned for his birthday and he was going to propose to me on one of the days we were there. I was shocked. Of course I said yes and tackled him in a big hug. We went on our trip together and it was amazing. Now it's a funny story that we tell everyone.
Homegirl wanted to fight me yesterday but never pulled up. Miss Girl, if you're seeing this, you have my address. Come over. Like, I'm done keeping my mouth shut. So basically, me and this girl have had issues for like 2 to 3 weeks now. And she ended up blocking me on Messenger like a week ago. So we have not talked in a long time. And then yesterday, I wake up and she unblocked me and is spamming my phone saying that the YouTube video I posted was about her. It wasn't. And then she's like, what's your address? Like, I'm gonna pull up. And she's over here being like, oh, you're so scared of me. Saying how she's gonna beat me up and whatever. And I'm not scared. Like, I have nothing to be scared of. Like, I promise y'all, So I'm like, okay, bet. So I sent her my address, right? And I was like, come on over. Like, we had been planning to do this for a while. And I'm not scared of anybody. So I'm like, okay, pull up. Here's my address. She blocked me and never pulled up. And I'm glad she didn't because that was a smart move for her. Y'all, homeboy searched my car yesterday. So this is my car, right? My dad gave it to me. And he has not driven it since I got my license. So it's been about 2 months since he's driven my car. And recently my dad has been accusing me of doing drugs. He's been accusing me left and right of doing them for the past week. So yesterday before dinner, my dad asked me if he could take my car to his chiropractor appointment. And obviously I said yes, like, I'm not going to say no to him taking my car because it's going to look suspicious. But I knew right away that this man was only going to take my car because he wanted to search it because he has 2 other cars that he could take. Why does he feel the need to take mine? So I'm already like, dude, homeboy's going to search my car. And that's exactly what he did. He comes back in the house and he's like, why did your mom get your boyfriend a birthday card? Because my boyfriend's birthday card was like sitting on the floor of my car. So then I'm about to go to the grocery store, so I get in my car and everything in my car was moved around. There were papers all over my floor. This thing that opens and has sunglasses in it was wide open. Center console was opened. He searched my car.
When I was around 13, my friend Sally and I were having a sleepover. I met her in the beginning of my first year at a new school. She was older than the other kids in our grade and was considered one of the popular kids, which is what I think drew me to her at first. It was your typical Friday night. We carpooled to her family's apartment after school. Her family was pretty religious and wouldn't let us watch horror movies, so we ended up watching Hunger Games instead. After the movie, Sally and I were hanging out in a room, listening to music and giving each other makeovers. By the end of it, we were looking much older than what we really were. Sally wasn't the most positive influence. Despite being my bestie at the time, she was manipulative and got off on putting me down. She also had a habit of talking to men online and lying about her age. She showed me some texts between her and a guy that she was talking to, which mostly consisted of him trying to convince her to meet up with him and the usual online creep stuff. According to him, he was 19. However, looking at the picture that he sent, this man was clearly at least 40 and looked like he lived in his mother's basement. Suddenly, we got a call from him. Sally answered without hesitation and I heard him say, "You're so pretty, why don't you come meet me?" Sally said she couldn't because she was spending the night with her friend. This sparked his interest. That's when he proceeded to try and ask us both to meet him. Sally, lacking any common sense, said yes. Part 2 of why you shouldn't sneak out. She planned for us to sneak out and walk 15 blocks to meet this creep in a deserted McDonald's parking lot. I didn't want to go, but Sally adamantly pleaded, saying that she didn't feel safe going by herself, so I agreed. We took our phones and I stuffed a kitchen knife in my bra in case something went wrong. The route we took was dark and deserted. When we got to the parking lot, we saw a beat-up Toyota Corolla. From what I could tell, there was more than one person inside. The man from the picture got out and left the door open behind him as he approached us. I turned on my flash to see and I could tell he was on something. His eyes were so wide they looked like they were about to pop out of his head. I suddenly became conscious of how big he was. He was about 6'2" and around 280 pounds. Sally and I were both significantly smaller than him. That's when he reached out and grabbed Sally by the arm. His friends got out of the car and he invited us back to the car for booze and drugs. I quickly took my knife out and when he saw it, he released her. I pulled Sally by the arm and ran faster than I ever had in my life. When we got to her home, we locked the doors, closed the blinds, and didn't sleep all night as we peeked out the window in case they followed us. To our dismay, the same Toyota was circling around her apartment building not once, not twice, but 3 times. After this, Sally and I stopped talking because she was mad at me for ruining her night. However, I think it was for the best.
Welcome back to Reddit Stories. I know how hilarious this is gonna sound, but this is not a joke. I am genuinely freaking out right now. I just finished high school and I'm looking for my first serious job, but I don't have a lot of experience. So to pad out my resume, I put on a hobbies and passions section. Here's the problem. I stupidly left my laptop open while going shopping, and my piece of shit little sister opened up my resume, deleted all the hobbies and passions, and just replaced it with garlic bread. Now keep in mind, it wasn't open at the time. She opened it, deleted my hobbies and passions, and put garlic bread, and then she closed it. I sent that resume to at least 30 companies with my only hobby or passion being described as garlic bread.
What's the most messed up thing someone has ever told you after barely knowing them? Well, I'm gonna go first. So in high school, I would take public transportation back home. Well, this one lady got on a bus with her daughter and sat next to me. I looked over and told her that her daughter looked very pretty. Then out of nowhere, she just starts crying. I asked, "Ma'am, are you alright?" And she says, "It's my husband." I didn't want to be invasive, but I asked, "Did something happen?" Then she goes on a 10-minute rant about how abusive her husband was and that she tried to stay for the baby. She was scared, but she finally had the courage to go. I felt bad and asked her, "Is there anything I could do to help?" And she proceeds to tell me that everything is fine. I'm like, "Are you sure?" She replies, "Yes, everything is fine. He had a peanut allergy and he died last week." And I'm like shook. And I said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And she responds, No, it's better that he's gone anyway." And I'm like, huh? Right after, she prepares to get off the bus and she grabs her daughter. I said bye. Right before she gets off, she said she put peanuts in his food. When I was 6 years old, my family moved to Virginia because my dad had a new job opportunity. We moved to this really old house that every step that you took, you'd hear the floorboards cracking. During the summer, I met this girl named Lucy. She knocked on my door one day and asked if I wanted to play, so for weeks, me and Lucy grew closer. We'd play hopscotch, jump rope, hand games, and hide and seek. One day, we were getting ready to play hopscotch, and my mom came outside telling me to come in and eat dinner. I asked my mom if Lucy could come too. My mom had asked, "Who's Lucy?" I looked back at Lucy and I said, "She's right here." My mom replied, "Right where?" When I turned back around, Lucy disappears. I called out for Lucy, but my mom yells out, "There isn't anyone out there. Get your butt in the house. It's time to come eat." It gets a little bit paranormal after this incident, but Come back for part 2 if you want to know why Lucy disappeared.